Thank you for joining me today. Well, this is the Tuesday, November 8th edition of our video devotionals. We appreciate you being with us today. Hope your Tuesday's going well. We call this each week Thankful Tuesday, and certainly we have much to be thankful for. And then, of course, today's November the 8th. You know that. I've said that already. It's Tuesday. And what does that mean? It's election day. It's called the midterm elections. And I encourage and have been encouraging people to go and vote as I believe God would want you to vote and who to vote for. There is a way of doing that. I did some research yesterday and actually spoke to some people today to confirm some things as we were in line. And this is the first time, Christian and I've had to wait as long as we waited in line to vote today. And actually it's encouraging to me because I think there's a lot of people just wanting to make their voice known, and I think make it known for the right reasons. And but at any rate, so we voted, and I encourage you to vote if you have not, and you're still thinking about it. It's not too late. Now, certainly, if you're not registered, I get that. But if you're capable of voting, and we're asking you to go out and vote, and certainly we want you to vote as God would want you to vote. And but today is that day, so if you can do it, I would encourage you to do it. We're going to be in John chapter 16 today, the very last verse, just one verse today, as we're reading through the Bible in 1 year's time. Of course, before the end of this week, we'll be into the book of Acts. So we're rapidly getting through the Bible, but there's so many things we could give you, but we're going to zero in on today on this particular passage here in John 16:33. Again, thank you all who watch. We appreciate you. And as we can pray for certain things, then may we be faithful to do that. And it's very helpful, needful. And we all need it, of course. Pray for these devotions to be used of God. If you'll pray that way, then God can use them. And, Satan doesn't want people to hear the word of God or be encouraged by the word of God or to get saved. We already know that. So don't be allowing Satan to do some things. We can pray, get a hold of God, and ask God to use these devotions in a special way just so people can be helped. All right, so John 16:33 says this. These things I have spoken unto you, that in me ye might have peace. In the world ye shall have tribulation, but be of good cheer. I have overcome the world. Now, so profound, knowing that the very next chapter that I read, but the very next chapter is Jesus praying. And we know that Jesus prayed in the Garden of Gethsemane, then Jesus is going to get arrested. So basically from chapters 13 through, as we're reading here, you're talking about a lot of content that's involving just hours, periods of time in terms of hours, and these things are happening. And as I look at this, the point I'm trying to make right here is this. When Jesus made the statement, I have overcome the world, this was not him making that statement after the crucifixion, and then, of course, after the resurrection, and saying, see, I've overcome the world because, yes, I was crucified and I resurrected. But that statement was not made after the resurrection. It's made prior to the crucifixion itself, prior to the trial. And Jesus is speaking to these disciples. It's one of the last things they're going to hear him say before he goes and prays. And then, of course, there's going to be that arrest and there's going to be things going on there. But for the most part, after that, then everybody just kind of scatters. And, of course, we know what Peter did as far as his public denial. But that's a very powerful statement, and I want to zero in on that Jesus says, I have overcome the world. Now, what did he mean by that? Number one, when he and you and I do the will of God, we always overcome the world. And that means if we're ever in a position where the world, humanly speaking, takes us and wants to try us or even not try us, but try to destroy us, even physically. Now, you understand people down through the ages. And I think if the Lord tarries is coming, this will be more pronounced that the people of God are going to go through things that will be duplicated from years gone by. But here's the point. Even if someone, I'll just use me as an example, if someone walks through the doors of the church on a Sunday morning or a Sunday afternoon in our case, or Wednesday night, whenever we're having church, and they say, you're under arrest. And I say, well, what's the charges? Well, you're violating some kind of ordinance or something that relates to your speaking the Bible or speaking what you say from the Bible, okay? Let's say I get arrested. And someone might say, man, that's not overcoming the world. The world seems to overcome people when they do things like that. So that's to the contrary. I believe when you're doing the will of God and things happen within the will of God because of the will of God, the world doesn't do what it does, and the world wins. perfect example, of course, is the arrest of Jesus, the crucifixion of Jesus, the sufferings that he went through, all that he went through. This was already in the mind of God. This was already part of the plan of God. But God knew there would be people who would go against Christ and have the positions that they had. So the world doesn't win. And in this case, because Jesus is going to the cross, the very fact that he's on his way there, he's going to be arrested within hours of when this statement was made by he himself. That he says, I've already overcome the world. I don't have to come out of a grave to prove I've overcome the world. I've already overcome the world because I'm doing the will of God. And the fact that I'll go to the cross and be crucified, Jesus was overcoming the world in that moment and in that event. And certainly when we think about the resurrection, we think, well, wow, finally, hey, let me tell you something. Everything that God planned and everything that God does, including whatever it is through us as we do and accomplish the will of God, the world never overcomes the child of God. There's never that case. It's just like the church. I'll tell our church all the time. Jesus made the statement, upon this rock I will build my church, and the gates of hell shall not prevail against it. You know that the devil has never shut down a church. The world has never shut down the church. Now, sometimes we as preachers, we say language and may even say things like that. But let me tell you something. It's God who controls the churches. And we could go on and on about that part. But look, the devil has never taken anybody to hell. The devil's never shut down a church. The devil is not the one instrumental in Jesus being crucified. The will of God was for Jesus to be the sacrifice, and all those things being accomplished. That's how you overcome the world. You do it by doing it through the power of God and doing it through doing according to God's will. And sometimes God's will may look to us like the world wins, but it never wins, not with God. And we want to understand that. He says, I've overcome the world. And this is prior to even being arrested, prior to the crucifixion. And if you and I will do the will of God, then guess what? We overcome the world. He has, and we're more than conquerors through him that loved us. So we're already conquerors. We're already winners. We're already what we're supposed to be for God. And when we do that, like he said, I have overcome the world. So the world, you're going to have tribulation. He says, I have spoken to you that you might have peace. And he said, be of good cheer. I've overcome the world. So we're not waiting until Jesus comes, as I finish this, that Jesus wins. He's already won. And the word of God is already being fulfilled. And one day, of course, he will come back and put down the powers of the Antichrist and all the armies of the world that align themselves with him. But you know what? That doesn't mean, well, then he overcomes the world. No, he's already overcome the world, just like he said right here. So no matter what happens today on this election day, by the way, no matter what happens, within the will of God, and when we do right, then we overcome the world. No matter what the world does, God has a plan, God has a will, and you're within that will, you're within the parameters of doing that which is right, then you overcome the world, no matter what the world may do, and no matter how seemingly negative it may be or seem. Then you know what? We're already overcomers. And Jesus says, I've overcome the world. So I love that. So I hope you have a great day today. Again, if you haven't voted, go out and vote if you would. Pray for all that's going on and any of the things that kind of would go against the justice of the situation. And we'll see you tomorrow on Winning Wednesday as we're thinking about overcoming. We'll see you tomorrow. Hope you're going to be safe today, healthy, and hope you have a great day.